So, as I get older and my desire matures, I notice a strange phenomena start to permeate my life. When I desire something, I make it difficult for myself to come into contact with that thing. I restrict my duration of time with that thing, or the amount of it I can have at one time. Sometimes I even designate the experience of it for certain times of year or certain hours of the day. But as a rule, for the things I desire, like things of beauty or my vices, they should never be easily accessible. To have such things at my will would deprive them of their power and me my enjoyment. When my mother and father were separated in the early stage of their relationship, my mother was in the US and my father was in Europe. My father told me that whenever he received a letter from my mother, he would finish all of his tasks for the day, remove any distractions like paying a bill or cleaning up a mess, take a shower, and then sit down with the letter. He didn't want anything to interrupt the feeling of reading the letter. Of course, as soon as he retrieved the letter, he could have ripped it open and read it with fervor because such letters take a long time to get to you and a long time to create. But no, my father restricted himself from his gratification, and it's not even instant gratification. He said to himself, and he said to that letter, "One more moment. I want to get this right." When me and my friends sit down to a beautiful dinner, we dress for dinner. To change dress is an indication that the moment that we are about to experience is different than the other moments in the day. It is of a higher order. It requires procurement. When I received my first copy of Anais Nin's Under a Glass Bell, it's a collection of short stories by her. It was printed on her Germer press, which means it actually passed through Anaïs's own hands, because at the time Anaïs was the only person running the press. When I first showed Cami, my friend, who is also a lover of Anais Nin, when I showed her that book, she didn't touch it for months. She didn't read it for months. She told me she wasn't ready. To be ready is to be worthy. The passage of time that restricts Cami from touching or reading that book is a rite of passage. It would be brutish, barbaric almost, to read it up front. You need to earn it. I, of course, read it, but we learn such things from our friends, right? I have a rare vinyl of Kyoku by Toshinori Kondo and DJ Crush, and I only try to listen to it whenever it rains. Honestly, any other way of listening to it definitely diminishes it. And if you've listened to that album, you'll understand why a certain atmosphere is imperative in order to hear the music the right way for the full effect. To listen to the album on like any other day or on a hot summer day, like some complete opposite scenario, it reduces that perfect album to any other song I've ever listened to. Giving it its own atmosphere is not only to enjoy it more, but it's to respect its true aesthetic capacity. It's to respect those who composed it and performed it and their vision. To give in to a desire is to remove your desire. What separates us from the things that we love defines, arguably, our desire for them. Without the separation, individual things cease to be individual. They're hoarded along with the rest of the mundane and forgettable objects or occurrences in your life. Now, if you will, I am going to get a little bit theoretical here because I just learned about something very interesting and I'd like to share it with you. I want to talk to you all about Lacan. Jacques Lacan was a French psychoanalyst, the most controversial since Freud. Lacan was fascinated by our desire. He is most known for something he calls his only invention, the objet Petit, the object cause of desire. Now, Lacan isn't exactly like the easiest guy to understand as somebody going in firsthand, so a lot of this is going to be me trying to describe to you what I learned, and if I get anything wrong, please let me know. With the help of Todd McGowan on YouTube, as well as Julian Medeiros, I was able to grip Lacan's ideas with better confidence through accessible applications, and hopefully I can relay the information to you properly and correctly. There's also a public article that I found that was really fascinating. It was by Kirshner. It's called Rethinking Desire. And that also aided in my understanding of the objet petit a, as well as the concept of jouissance, which is another famous idea of Lacan's. And jouissance plays an important role with the objet petit a. I will briefly talk about it in this video, but we're not going to go in depth about jouissance. This video is about objet petit a only. Okay, so I hope I can get all this information correct, but it's fascinating. It's really cool. Objet petit a is described as the object cause of desire. It is not the desirable object itself. It is the reason for desiring an object in the first place. It acts as a kind of barrier to the desirable thing, but it is also the way in which we come to perceive the object of desire in the first place. Along the way, whenever I get into concepts like this, and I just happen to pass through, and I'm constantly reminded of things that I have read before, and it just seems like everything feels connected. And I'm reminded here of metaxou, which is a Greek concept that I've talked about before. Every separation is a link. So objet petit a in this way is like metaxou. It's like through the barrier. It separates us from the desire, but it's how we come to know it. And objet petit a makes our object desirable in the first place because we cannot experience it in totality, in its fullness. All right, so we're going to go one more layer deep. Lacan, like so many people following Plato, have theorized about the difference between the real and reality. The real is the true essence of things, the semiotic existence which predates and supersedes this reality, this thing we're living here. Our reality is an illusion, but it is the separation in the link. It is what also gives us access to the real, a little bit of it. Total access to the real, however, is impossible, and if one tries to access it through the pursuit of jouissance, which is pleasure beyond the pleasure principle, that is a form of madness. So objet petit a is a little bit of the real, which intercepts our perception and makes enjoyment possible in the first place. It is objet petit a is the impossible. It's the thing we can't have ever. That's at any point in time. It is a barrier that Lacan believes allows us to have a full life of enjoyment, because we can continue to enjoy things without eradicating them. Now you might be wondering, what is a? What is objet petit a? Okay. The reason why it is an a is because the word for other in French is autre, which starts with an a. So petit a is just petite other, small other. Okay, and if you have listened to my videos, if you have looked into philosophy at all, or even psychoanalysis, you will be familiar with what the other is. The other is all the things that are not us. Otherness is what gives anything definition, variation, value, and it is what causes us to desire things. Otherness is what is opposite to us in the plainest sense, but if we are human, then the other is also all of the things that we could never fathom, we could never access. And it also represents a world before we were born into the symbolic world of language and understanding and comprehension. This is it's not even primordial. This is before we could even comprehend things in the first place, the soup that we once belonged to, I guess, of energy or something. So when we desire something, apparently, it does not even come into existence. It is not even brought to our attention until it contains a little bit of something that we could never access. That is the law of our desire. Objet petit a is what Lacan calls lack. And so we are left in a state, whenever we desire something, we are left in this perpetual chase for the unattainable in that thing that we desire, rather than achieving it and reaching some kind of goal, because if you reach the goal, then you destroy the desire. So it's this difference between what I believe Julian Medeiros said. It's the difference between aim and a goal. Again, to achieve a desire is to lose it. So you want to remain in that state of chase, right? And that's why we're familiar with that old saying, the chase is better than the catch. Now, Through careful cultivation of objet petit a, we are able to experience, this is a great thing, what Lacan calls surplus enjoyment, meaning that you can enjoy something over and over again without it becoming equal to other things, or you losing interest in it and therefore annihilating it. Lacan believes that this is the true aim of the death drive. And if you aren't familiar with the death drive, it is a Freudian theory about like our desire for destruction. And I have a video about it. You can listen to it here. So instead of wanting to destroy ourselves and annihilate ourselves, really we want to, the desire is actually to experience something over and over again and still be able to enjoy it. But because we're human beings, that requires a little bit of discomfort, and there has to be otherness present, which gets in our way. Now, I felt like it took me some time to like understand what the objet petit a is in certain situations, and it might be difficult for you as well. So I'll give some examples. Todd McGowan, whenever he talks about objet petit a, he describes a beloved with a mole on their face. Let's say it's my little Monroe, okay? I know a lot of people don't like this, for example, about me, that I have this. So the beloved is the desired object, and let's say the objet petit a is this piercing, this mole. The mole is something a little bit ugly about the person, okay? And that little bit of ugliness is otherness. A flaw can be objet petit a. And the way he explains it is that the mole is the object cause of your desire, and it is precisely this flaw which makes it possible for you to perceive that person as desirable. He says it like you guys look at me through this mole. And all the while, this is a distortion of our perception of the individual, because it is solely from your subjective experience. Subjectivity in this situation to Lacan is what gives our world variation and complexity, and of course keeps things interesting. It makes life worth living. It's part of the ebb and flow, the general heartbeat of all matter and existence. And this idea of not being able to perceive something, not being able to see something until, let's say, the objet petit a is present, it reminds me of Oscar Wilde's theory about nature and art. And if you aren't familiar, I have a video on that as well. Fascinating. Oscar Wilde, in his Decay of Lying, has argued that it is nature who imitates art and not the other way around. He says that if it were not for the artist, let's take Whistler, for example, because he's an excellent painter to include in this. If it was not for Whistler to paint the docks in London in the way he did, we would never really see them. We would look past them. But Whistler's nocturnes look into something very real, perhaps to use that word in the Lacanian sense. Whistler was actually known as a painter which taught the observer how to look at the world like an artist and how to really see things the way they are, I suppose. Have you ever been, it's been like a foggy day, let's say you're on a drive to work, and have you ever just all of a sudden noticed that the fog isn't really gray, but it's actually blue or green instead? And you're like, oh, it's actually a color. Whenever you make that switch to see something, it really feels like you're seeing it the way it is, not the way, and before you didn't even think about it. You didn't even care. So he painted things as they ought to be seen. So when an artist brings to life, so to speak, something which we would have never desired in the first place, the objet petit a, if I'm correct, would be the artist's idealism. The idealism too is like a impossibility, it's an inaccessibility. And through art, we try to access it in a healthy way, I guess. It is a fantasy. And if you research about jouissance, and this is like the only time I'm going to really talk about it, attempting to converge with the objet petit a, in the simplest way possible, to make the fantasy real, is where madness happens. Jouissance, to achieve jouissance, which is impossible if I'm correct, would be to lose your absolute mind. You cannot. Jouissance is a pleasure that exceeds the pleasure principle. It exceeds what the human being is capable of feeling, of experiencing. But we sometimes seek to experience that. According to Lacan, the goal is surplus enjoyment, not jouissance. Jouissance would destroy us. but surplus enjoyment maintains the sanctity of the objet petit, and therefore the sanctity of our desire. The objet petit, sorry, I feel like I'm saying that word like 1,000 times, but it reminds us of a real world that we can never access. And if we respect that boundary, we can live a healthy life with our desires. So now I want to go back to the beginning of the video, the pleasures I discussed earlier. And while the objet petit is staunchly defended as an object of nothing, it's not like it's something which like exists that we like can't exactly place there. Like it's a natural phenomenon that like is part of our perception and happens like without us even, it exists without us even knowing it. It isn't a thing, but like we can kind of simulate it or augment its properties in our life in order to preserve our desires. If we understand its nature, we can introduce it ourselves in addition to the barriers that are already present that are out of our control. Like, for example, you could say all of the things that my father did before reading my mother's letter is a simulation of an objet petit. The real objet petit is like the amount of time it takes for the letter to arrive, or even the actual envelope that the letter is in. Those are barriers as well. Getting dressed for dinner is a simulated objet petit, but it's also setting the table or eating the food with a knife and fork rather than just scooping it up with your hands and shoving the food in your mouth. These barriers are in place by the nature of our desire or through our physical intervention, and they allow us to enjoy the things properly over and over again. It shows our desire respect. The great law of our desire is that we should not be able to access our desire in totality. Full access to it brings us to various negative places, loss of interest and insanity among them. I find it beautiful that we can't access our desires. Whenever you think about one of your favorite songs that you just love listening to. I remember, again, I'm remembering now, I had a teacher. We had an oddly similar taste in music. And he told me that he doesn't listen to his favorite songs very often because he doesn't want to wear them out. He doesn't want to lose the effect they have on him. And that's exactly, as I get older, that is the mentality that I try to have with things that I care about, whether they're people or whether it's just any activity I enjoy or just experiencing things of beauty. You have to restrict yourself from those things, but you start to do it. When you follow this, you almost start to do it in more and more perverse ways. You purposefully put detours in between you and this thing. And these detours turn into ritual. These detours turn into ceremonies. This is where all of these things come into play. Every ceremony is a kind of prolonging of time. We are all moving forward in time. We are experiencing things. And as you get older, you notice that time moves by quicker and you start slipping. You start not being able to hold on to things as long. And that's when this defense mechanism almost kicks in. For great lovers of beauty and art too, especially. We are how can we keep this thing for as long as possible? How can we stop this momentum of time and our inability to keep our attention on something for so long? And I think intervening, actually inserting a fake kind of objet petit on top of what's already there, on top of the already this impossible barrier that any given object of desire already has. I think that's a tendency that everyone can benefit from. There's obviously ways you can do this that are more extreme. Some people don't care to go to the lengths of ritual for their favorite food, but why not? I think we can all benefit from adding a little bit of time and space between the things that we want and us. And all the while, I feel like most of human progress has attempted to make it easier for us to come into contact with the things that we desire, right? We live in a world where we prioritize comfort and convenience, but I feel like every time we do something that progresses forward, I end up wanting to take 2 steps back. just to stop and look at the view. Please comment below. Comment below what those things are for you guys. I would like to know, like, what do you guys do to make it difficult for you to come into contact with a certain thing? Or like, what is it that you desire, and what do you do to prepare yourself for that desire? Or, you know, what is that otherness? What is that barrier between you and the thing? Please write down your answers. I want to know. But in the next video, I'm going to talk about jouissance, because that's another fascinating subject, and it's right in line with what I've been talking about for the past like 6 months or something. But yeah, okay. That's all I have to say today. I hope you thought these concepts were as interesting as I did. And just another step into understanding beauty and understanding like why we have it in our lives and how we should act whenever we're around beautiful things, or how we should respect it. So thought I'd share that all with you this week. Sorry this video was late. But yeah, again, leave your comment below. Tell me what your object of desire is and what your object cause of desire is, if you can figure it out, and leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe as always, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.